Good morning, everyone. The tangled web of emotions that ties us to someone, whether it's a friend, a partner, or even a family member. We invest our hearts, our time, and our energy, and then one day we find ourselves needing to untangle. It's painful, messy, and sometimes it feels impossible. But here's the truth. Emotional detachment isn't about shutting down your feelings. It's about reclaiming your peace. Let's talk about honoring your emotions, because this is where healing truly begins. When we're trying to emotionally detach from someone, our first instinct is often to shut down or bury how we feel. We tell ourselves, if I just push these emotions away, they'll go away on their own. But let me tell you something, emotions don't work that way. Imagine you're holding a beach ball underwater. You can push it down, you can hold it there for a while, but eventually it's going to pop back up, and usually with more force than before. That's what happens when we suppress our emotions. The pain, the sadness, the frustration, they don't disappear. They wait for you. Honoring your emotions is about recognizing that these feelings aren't your enemy. They're messengers. They're there to tell you something important, to help you process what's happening, and to guide you toward healing. The key is to allow yourself to feel them fully without judgment. Start by naming your emotions. Are you feeling sad, angry, betrayed? Maybe all of the above? That's okay. Put a name to what you're feeling, because emotions lose their power when we label them. When we say this is sadness, it's no longer this overwhelming, nameless weight. It's something we can understand and work through. And next, give yourself permission to sit with those feelings. This might look like journaling about what you're going through, talking to a trusted friend or therapist, or even just sitting in silence and letting the tears come. Crying isn't a sign of weakness. It's your body's way of releasing what it's been holding on to. And here's the thing, when you honor your emotions, you'll discover they're not as scary as you thought. Emotions are like waves. They rise, they peak, and eventually they fall. If you let yourself feel the wave fully, you'll come out the other side with more clarity and peace. The process of honoring your emotions also requires self-compassion. You might find yourself thinking, why am I still feeling this way? Shouldn't I be over it by now? But healing doesn't follow a schedule. Be gentle with yourself. Remind yourself that it's okay to feel this way. You're not broken, you're human. Finally, remember that honoring your emotions doesn't mean letting them control you. It's about creating space for them to exist without letting them dictate your actions. You can feel sadness without texting the person you're trying to detach from. You can feel anger without lashing out. This balance, acknowledging emotions while choosing how to respond, is where true strength lies. So, honor your emotions. Let them flow through you, not around you. They're not something to fear. They're a natural part of healing. And when you allow yourself to feel fully, you give yourself the greatest gift, freedom. When we think about boundaries, the first thing that often comes to mind is distance, cutting someone off, shutting someone out, or building an emotional wall to keep them away. But boundaries are not walls. They are bridges. They're a way to connect with yourself more deeply and to engage with others in a healthier, more respectful way. Here's the thing about walls. They're rigid and unyielding. They keep everything out, but they also keep you trapped inside. Walls are a defense mechanism born from fear or pain. But boundaries are intentional. They are about self-respect and self-preservation, not punishment or isolation. When you set a boundary, you're not saying, I don't care about you. You're saying, I care about myself enough to create space for my well-being. Boundaries allow you to define what's okay and what's not, what you're willing to give and what you're not willing to tolerate. They're a way of saying, here's where I end and you begin. So how do you build these bridges, these boundaries, without feeling guilty or fearful of hurting someone else? Step 1, understand your needs. Boundaries start with clarity. Take a moment to reflect on what you truly need right now. Is it physical space? Emotional distance? Do you need to limit conversations, interactions, or the time you spend thinking about this person? When you're clear on what you need, setting boundaries becomes less about reacting to someone else and more about protecting your own peace. Step 2, communicate clearly and kindly. Setting boundaries isn't about confrontation or hostility. It's about being honest and clear in a way that respects both you and the other person. For example, instead of saying, I need you to stop bothering me, you might say, I need some time and space to focus on myself right now. I hope you can respect that. It's okay if this feels uncomfortable at first. Boundaries can be hard to communicate, especially if you're worried about how the other person will react. But remember, someone who truly cares for you will respect your boundaries. And if they don't, that's an important red flag to notice. Step 3, follow through without guilt. Here's the challenging part: sticking to your boundaries. It's easy to set them in the moment, but what happens when the other person tests them, or when guilt creeps in, whispering, maybe I'm being too harsh? Remind yourself why you set the boundary in the first place. It's not about being mean or distant. It's about protecting your emotional health. Think of it as putting on your oxygen mask first. You can't show up for anyone else if you're constantly running on empty. And here's a powerful truth: you don't owe anyone unlimited access to you. Your time, energy, and emotions are valuable, and it's okay to prioritize yourself. Boundaries are a way of saying, I respect myself enough to choose what's best for me. Step 4, recognize boundaries as acts of love. Here's where the bridge comes in. Boundaries aren't about building a moat around your heart. They're about creating a pathway to healthier connections. When you set boundaries, you're teaching others how to treat you, and you're teaching yourself that your needs matter. Boundaries also give the other person clarity. Instead of leaving them guessing or creating tension through unspoken resentment, boundaries lay everything out on the table. They allow relationships to exist in a space of mutual respect and understanding. So, step 5, embrace boundaries as a form of growth. Lastly, remember that boundaries are dynamic. They might change as you heal and grow, and that's okay. What matters is that you're honoring your journey. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you failed at a relationship or that you're giving up. It means you're choosing to grow in a way that's authentic to you. Boundaries are bridges because they connect you to your true self while allowing others to interact with you in a healthier way. They're a statement of self-respect, a tool for healing, and a way to invite love and respect into your life, starting with yourself. So don't be afraid to set boundaries. They're not the end of a relationship, they're the beginning of a better one with yourself and with others. One of the most challenging aspects of emotionally detaching from someone is letting go of the idealized version of them or the relationship you've been holding on to. Often what keeps us tethered isn't who the person actually is, but the fantasy we've created around them. It's the what could have been or the if only scenarios that play on repeat in our minds. Letting go of this fantasy is difficult because it feels like we're not just losing the person, but also losing the dreams, hopes, and possibilities tied to them. But here's the truth. Holding on to a fantasy doesn't serve you. It keeps you stuck, unable to see the reality for what it is. And reality, even when it's painful, is where healing begins. Step 1, recognize the fantasy. The first step to releasing the fantasy is recognizing it. Ask yourself, what story have I been telling myself about this person or relationship? Maybe it's the belief that they were the one, or that they could change if you just tried a little harder. Maybe it's the image of the perfect future you imagine together. Recognizing the fantasy means being honest with yourself about the gap between what you wanted and what actually is. It's not easy, but it's essential. Acknowledge where you may have idealized them, ignored red flags, or held on to hope that things would magically improve. Once you've identified the fantasy, it's time to challenge it. This doesn't mean invalidating your feelings or pretending the good moments didn't happen. It means looking at the relationship objectively. With this person truly meeting my emotional needs? Were there consistent patterns of behavior that caused me pain or confusion? Write down both the positives and negatives of the relationship. Seeing it on paper can help you confront the reality and recognize that the fantasy may have been built on selective memories or wishful thinking. Acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with what happened or that it no longer hurts. It means you've stopped resisting the truth. You acknowledge the person for who they truly are, not who you wanted them to be. This step requires self-compassion. It's okay to grieve, not just the relationship, but also the dream you had for it. Let yourself mourn in the what ifs. Cry, journal, talk it out. Whatever helps you process the loss. Acceptance is a process, and it's normal to have moments where you slip back into longing for the fantasy. When that happens, gently remind yourself of the reality. The loss of a fantasy can actually create space for something more fulfilling. By letting go of an illusion, you free yourself to build something real, whether it's a deeper connection with yourself or with someone else in the future, because right now you're putting your needs of the future in the context of the present in the future. Holding on to a fantasy often keeps us living in the past or a hypothetical future. To break free, focus on the here and now. What can you do today to take care of yourself? What brings you joy, peace, or a sense of accomplishment? Practice mindfulness to bring yourself back to the present, whether it's through meditation, exercise, or spending time with loved ones. Grounding yourself in the present helps you move forward. Step 6, trust in what's ahead. Releasing a fantasy is ultimately an act of faith. Faith in yourself, in the future, and in the idea that you deserve something real and meaningful. It's about trusting that letting go of what wasn't meant for you creates space for what is. This episode allowed us to talk about the experiment of letting go of the idea that you think you have to control your life, to control your future so that you can control others. Remind yourself, you don't have to settle for a relationship that exists only in your imagination. Reality, with all its imperfections, is where true connection and growth happen. Letting go of a fantasy isn't about forgetting or erasing the past. It's about honoring the lessons it taught you and choosing to move forward with clarity and strength. It's about releasing what was never real so you can embrace what truly is. And in doing so, you reclaim your power, your peace, and your ability to build a life rooted in authenticity and love. As we journey through the process of emotional detachment, it's important to remember this. Detaching doesn't mean losing who we are or closing our hearts. It means choosing to let go of what no longer serves us, so we can create space for growth, healing, and the possibility of something better. When we honor our emotions, set healthy boundaries, and release the fantasies we've held on to, we begin to reclaim our lives not as they were, but as they can be. We create space for a deeper connection to ourselves, a more authentic relationship with others, and the freedom to step forward without fear or regret. Detachment isn't about forgetting the past. It's about recognizing that the future holds new possibilities, real, grounded, and filled with opportunities to thrive. So take a moment to thank yourself for the courage it takes to let go, for the strength it takes to embrace the reality of where you are, and for the wisdom you gain along the way. Your journey is yours alone, and it's one that will lead you to a more empowered, authentic version of yourself. And thank you.